All right, let's be honest. When you hear 1950s fashion, what pops into your head? Poodle skirts, right? Saddle shoes.
Yeah, those are the
It's
classics.
definitely iconic, but honestly, just scratching the surface. We're going way deeper into 1950s fashion today, looking past those typical images.
So much more than that.
Exactly. We've got this really cool research paper that breaks down the major trends and who or what really shaped style in the 50s, from elegance to like full-on rebellion and everything in between.
It's pretty fascinating stuff. What grabs me about this era is, yeah, it's about the clothes, but also what they stood for. Like the 50s were a huge time of change after the war years, right?
Yeah, totally.
In fashion, it became this powerful way to express all that. The changes, worries, hopes, all sewn right in.
That's such a good point. I feel like a perfect example of that is Christian Dior's new look, which, by the way, if anyone needs a quick reminder, silhouette in fashion just means the overall shape of the clothes.
Right, like the outline, the basic structure that makes the look.
Exactly.
And Dior, he flipped that on its head in 47 with his first collection. Think about it. This is a world just getting out from under World War II, where clothes were all about practicality, making do with limited fabric. Suddenly, bam! These crazy, luxurious, super feminine designs, cinched waists, giant skirts.
Our source mentions Dior using tons and tons of fabric for these, right? Like an intentional screw you to the whole wartime scarcity thing.
Oh, absolutely. It was a statement for sure. Imagine those full skirts, like twirling around, the total opposite of those wartime styles. Daring, beautiful, and man, did it cause a stir.
It did. And not everyone was thrilled with, like, the extravagance of it, using so much fabric when the world was still recovering.
Right. There were definitely those who saw it as tone deaf.
Definitely. And it wasn't just the fabric. Our source also talks about the feminist side of the argument against the new look. Some people said, hey, this silhouette, it's restrictive, just emphasizing a woman's body. That's not progress.
Exactly. Fashion always becomes this battleground for those bigger cultural conversations.
Yeah.
But what's interesting is that Dior's influence, it went way beyond just the new look. Throughout the 50s, he kept innovating. You get the H-line slimmer, straighter, and of course the A-line, which, let's be honest, eternally flattering, flaring out from the shoulders.
She's such a classic shape.
Right. So he's setting trends, but also pushing the technical side, like how clothes are actually made, the shapes they can create.
So a true innovator.
Totally. And he wasn't alone. The 50s saw all these other huge names in design who shaped how we see fashion. Balenciaga, Givenchy, Chanel, Balmain, each with their own thing going on.
Okay, let's break some of those down because I'm sure not everyone listening is super familiar with all of them. Who should we start with?
How about Balenciaga? He was known for pushing the boundaries of what clothing could even be. Like, his designs, people call them architectural, sculptural even. Imagine a dress, but it just hangs from the shoulders loose, almost like a sack, I guess.
It's a sack dress.
Yeah, revolutionary at the time. And then he had the baby doll silhouette. Short, full skirts, innocent but sophisticated.
You know, I can see echoes of that stuff even today. Like that oversized kind of minimalist look that's in now feels very Balenciaga inspired.
Definitely. His impact on modern fashion is huge.
Oh, totally.
Balenciaga was way ahead of his time. But we should talk about another giant of the era, Hubert de Givenchy. His name just screams timeless elegance, don't you think?
Totally. Everything he designed just oozes sophistication.
He was a master tailor, known for pieces that were like crazy chic, but also so flattering. And of course, we can't talk Givenchy without Audrey Hepburn.
Such an iconic duo. She wore his stuff in some of her biggest movies like Sabrina, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Talk about a perfect match.
Right. Perfect example of how a designer and a star can come together and make something legendary. But we can't forget another icon who made a big comeback in the 50s, Coco Chanel.
Yes. After taking a break for, 15 years, she comes back in 54 with those suits, you know the ones? And it's like she was saying, women, we can be powerful, indie stylists.
She did not come to play. Our source says Chanel actually dissed Dior's new look, thought those tight silhouettes were ridiculous, which, think about how big both their work was.
That sounds about right. Classic Chanel, always got to be your own thing. But speaking of doing your own thing, this era is when teenagers start finding their own style too, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
This whole demographic blows up in the 50s because of the baby boom and the economy doing so well. All these teens with freedom, money to spend, they wanted to express themselves, not dress like their parents.
So how'd that play out in what they wore?
Well, for girls, it was all about being feminine, but with an edge. Poodle skirts, capris, those ponytails, bright colors, fun patterns. And guys, they were going for casual, cool, taking cues from, like, their music idols. So leather jackets, jeans, T-shirts.
The birth of rock and roll was huge for 50s style.
For sure. That music, it was raw, rebellious, and it wasn't just something you listened to. It was a whole vibe, the way you looked, everything.
And nobody rocked that look better than Elvis.
Exactly. Elvis with his moves, that hair, and, of course, the leather jackets. He was the poster boy for teenage rebellion. His whole image, raw, cool, it just clicked with a generation that wanted something different.
Yeah.
But while teens were busy shaking things up, there was another revolution happening in American fashion, one that was all about being comfy and practical.
You're talking about the American look, right? Like Claire McCardell.
Yeah. McCardell was brilliant. Our source talks about how she used separates, tops, bottoms. You could mix and match them. And she loved denim, which is basically unheard of in high fashion at the time.
Wild to think about now, right? Denim is everywhere. That was a bold move. So was this like a direct response to the fancier styles that were big then?
Kind of, yeah. It was about making clothes that looked good, but you could also live in. Comfortable, functional. And this idea of clothes being less stuffy got another boost thanks to new fabrics.
Like nylon and acrylic. Our source mentions those. They were cheaper, easier to take care of than older fabrics.
Totally. It's easy to forget now, but that was huge EE, especially for women who are working and raising families. And don't forget about wrinkle-free fabrics.
Genius. Saves so much time.
Right. Looking effortlessly put together just got easier. But all this focus on being practical didn't mean giving up on style. The American look was clean, simple, effortlessly chic, which is probably why it still works today.
Absolutely. And speaking of timeless style, we got to talk about the icons of 50s fashion.
Mm-hmm.
When you think of Audrey Hepburn, James Dean, Marilyn Monroe, what does that say about the style of the time?
Yeah, they were each such a different side of that decade. Audrey Hepburn, understated elegance, those gorgeous Givenchy pieces. She just IS sophistication.
Totally. And James Dean, ultimate rebel, right?
Yeah.
Jeans, T-shirt, leather jacket, like that's still the HE look for that whole vibe.
It's timeless. And then you've got Marilyn, all glamour and sex appeal. Nobody did it like her.
It's amazing how those three went beyond just fashion and became like cultural icons,
Right. Their styles said something about who they were, but it also tapped into what was happening at the time, what people wanted.
And they still inspire people today. Everyone knows those images. Their style gets copied all the time.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not even just the clothes. It's the whole attitude, the confidence they had.
Like, their look became a shortcut for a certain feeling, Audrey's elegance, James's rebellion, Marilyn. Speaking of details, we can't forget about the little things, accessories, makeup, all that added to the whole 1950s package.
Oh, for sure. Cat-eye glasses, pearls, headscarves, they all played a part in creating that 1950s look. Seriously, just put on some cat-eye glasses and you're practically transported back in time.
And the makeup was iconic. That perfect eyeliner, the bold red lipstick, Elizabeth Taylor and Cleopatra, anyone. And don't even get me started on those hairstyles.
The bouffant, so big, literally. It totally captured that obsession with volume, making everything bigger. And then you had Audrey Hepburn rocking the pixie cut, which was so modern, so chic, still looks amazing.
Mm-hmm. It's crazy how those trends always come back around. We're totally seeing that now. But we've been talking a lot about women's fashion. Did menswear change much during this time?
Oh, absolutely. It
Okay.
became way more relaxed compared to earlier decades. Suits weren't so stiff. The shoulders got softer. The fit a little boxier. Three-button suits were big. And lighter fabrics like cotton, linen, those became more acceptable for summer.
So guys got to be more comfy too.
Exactly. Hawaiian shirts, chinos, sports jackets,
Yeah.
all about being comfortable and practical.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into 50s fashion, it's wild to see how much was going on.
Totally. You've got the elegance of Dior's new look, teenagers rebelling against, everything, casual clothes becoming a thing, new fabrics. It all comes together to make this really rich time for fashion.
It's so cool how fashion reflects what's going on in the world, but also pushes back against it,
Totally. And you can't deny how much the 50s still influences what we wear.
The silhouettes, the fabrics, the whole love affair with casual clothes. But also, the 50s made it clear, fashion is about expressing yourself, showing who you are, what you believe in.
Exactly. Those rebellious teenagers proved clothes were more than just clothes, they were a statement. And that stuck with us.
So interesting. From Paris runways to American streets, the 50s really left its mark. But before we go, I gotta ask. Imagine you had to dress like it was the 50s. What would you wear? What would your look say about you?
Oh, good question. I'm thinking that classic American look, maybe high-waisted capris, a nice collared shirt.
Chic and comfy. Love it. I think I'd have to go for one of those full skirts, cinched waist, maybe even try a headscarf.
I can see it. And imagine, if we really lived by those rules, everything would be different. The gloves, hats, even how we walked.
It was a whole different world for fashion, but that's why it's so fun to explore, right? Stepping back in time, seeing what shaped how people dressed, and realizing how it still connects to us now.
For sure. It reminds us that fashion is deeper than just trends. It's about who we are, what matters to us, and it keeps changing, just like we do.
This has been awesome. I always learn so much from these chats.
Me too. It's been great.
And for everyone listening, we want to hear from you. What surprised you about 50s fashion? What would your 50s style be? Hit us up on social media. Let's keep talking about it. Until next time, happy styling.